October 17th, 1943. The sky over Schweinfurt, Germany. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke pulls his Messerschmitt Bf-109 into position at 8,000 meters, scanning the American bomber formation below. B-17 flying fortresses, 72 of them, boring deeper into the Reich than he's ever seen them come, without fighter escort. The American fighters, P-47 Thunderbolts, turned back 30 minutes ago at the German border. They always do. Everyone knows. The heavy American fighters can't reach this far. The bombers are alone now. Vulnerable. Exactly as they should be. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Knoke checks his fuel gauge, his ammunition counter. Full on both. He radios his staffel. All aircraft, prepare to attack. Standard approach from 12 o'clock high. This is what German fighter pilots have done for months now. Wait for the American escorts to reach their maximum range and turn back, then fall upon the undefended bombers. It's mathematics, simple and brutal. The P-47's combat radius is roughly 300 kilometers from English bases. Schweinfurt lies 480 kilometers inside Germany. The Americans are defenseless. Knoke begins his diving attack. Then something catches his eye. 4 specks, high and fast, coming from the west. The sun behind them makes identification difficult. Probably more bombers straggling behind. He ignores them and focuses on his target. The specks grow larger. The silhouettes are wrong. Too small. Too sleek for bombers. Single-engine fighters. Impossible. The lead aircraft rolls and dives. Knoke sees it clearly now. Long nose, bubble canopy, square wingtips, laminar-flow wings, American markings, a fighter he's never encountered before. The aircraft closes on him at terrifying speed. Knoke brakes hard right, abandoning his attack run. The American fighter follows through his turn, staying with him. Knoke pulls harder, forcing his 109 into a tight, climbing spiral. The American stays locked on his tail. Tracer fire streams past his canopy. Knoke shoves the stick forward, diving away, using the 109's superior dive speed. He levels out at 3,000 meters, heart hammering. He looks back. The American fighter is climbing again, rejoining the bomber formation. Knoke checks his instruments. He's 480 kilometers inside Germany. Those fighters came from England. That's impossible. American fighters don't have that kind of range. Everyone knows that. He lands at Wiesbaden. 90 minutes later, his wingman didn't make it back. Shot down by one of the mystery fighters in the debriefing room. Knoke fills out his combat report. Under enemy aircraft type, the intelligence officer tells him what they've learned from other encounters that day. North American P-51 Mustang. Under observations, Knoke writes 3 words. Everything has changed. The story begins, not in October 1943, but 2 years earlier, in April 1941, in an office at the British Purchasing Commission in New York. The British desperately need fighters. The Battle of Britain has been won, but barely. Spitfire production can't meet demand. The RAF needs additional aircraft, and they need them quickly. They approach North American Aviation with a contract to build Curtiss P-40 Warhawks under license. Edgar Schmued, North American's chief designer, looks at the proposal and makes a counteroffer. Don't build obsolete P-40s. Give us 120 days, and we'll design a completely new fighter, better than anything you have. The British are skeptical, but desperate. They agree. Schmued, an immigrant from Germany who fled in 1930, assembles his team. The challenge is brutal. Design, test, and prepare for production a brand new fighter aircraft in 4 months. Most aircraft take 2 to 3 years from concept to prototype. Schmued has advantages. North American has recently tested captured German and British fighters. They know what works. The Messerschmitt 109 climbs superbly. The Spitfire turns beautifully. The Focke-Wulf 190 dives like a meteor. Schmued wants all of those qualities in one airframe. He starts with the engine, the Allison V1710, 12 cylinders, liquid-cooled, producing 1,150 horsepower. Reliable, but with one fatal flaw. It lacks a supercharger for high-altitude performance. Above 15,000 feet, the Allison gasps. But the Mustang isn't being designed for high-altitude combat. The British want a low-level tactical fighter and ground attack aircraft. For that mission, the Allison is perfect. Schmued then designs the most aerodynamically efficient airframe of the war. Laminar-flow wings developed by ENAC, the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics. These wings maintain smooth airflow over their surface, reducing drag by up to 40% compared to conventional designs. The fuselage, sleek and narrow, houses the coolant radiator in an innovative belly scoop that actually produces thrust by heating and expanding the cooling air. Every detail serves efficiency. Flush rivets across the entire skin, retractable tailwheel, smooth, uninterrupted surfaces. The result is an aircraft with less drag than any fighter in existence. On October 26, 1940, 117 days after the contract was signed, the prototype NA-73X rolls out. Test pilot Vance Breese takes it up on October 26th. At 15,000 feet, he pushes the throttle forward. The airspeed indicator climbs. 350 miles per hour, 370, 400. Breeze grins. The Mustang is fast, incredibly fast for an aircraft with only 1,150 horsepower. But speed isn't the revelation. Range is. In December 1940, North American runs endurance tests. With internal fuel only, the Mustang flies for 4 hours at cruise power. 4 hours. The Spitfire, Mark V, Britain's frontline fighter, flies for about 90 minutes. The P-47 Thunderbolt, America's newest fighter, flies for roughly 2 hours. The Mustang's range is double that of comparable fighters, and this is with internal tanks only. Add external drop tanks, and the numbers become staggering. The RAF receives its first Mustangs, designated Mustang Mark I, in November 1941. They're assigned to Army Cooperation Command for low-level reconnaissance and ground attack. The Allison engine's poor high-altitude performance keeps them out of fighter-versus-fighter combat over Europe, but RAF pilots immediately notice something extraordinary. They can fly deep into occupied France, conduct their missions, and return with fuel to spare. One pilot, Flying Officer Hollis Hills, writes in his log after a mission in March 1942, penetrated 150 miles into France, photographed targets, engaged enemy transport, returned with 40 minutes of fuel remaining. This aircraft has legs nobody else does. The Mustang's range catches the attention of RAF test pilot Ronald Harker. In April 1942, he flies a Mustang Mark I at the Royal Aircraft Establishment. Harker is impressed by everything except the engine. In his report, he writes a suggestion that will change the air war. Fit this aircraft with a Merlin engine. The Rolls-Royce Merlin, the same engine that powers the Spitfire, has a 2-stage supercharger that maintains power up to 30,000 feet. If the Mustang's efficient airframe could be matched with the Merlin's high-altitude performance, the result would be transformative. Rolls-Royce builds 5 experimental Mustangs with Merlin engines in late 1942. The test results are stunning. Maximum speed increases from 390 miles per hour to 441. Service ceiling rises from 31,000 feet to 42,000 feet. Rate of climb doubles, but the range, already excellent, becomes unprecedented. With 2 75-gallon drop tanks, the Merlin Mustang can fly over 2,000 miles. Combat radius, the distance it can fly out, fight and return, reaches 750 miles from base. To put this in perspective, from airfields in southern England, a Mustang can reach Berlin, 600 miles away. Escort bombers throughout their mission over the target, engage enemy fighters, and return home. No other fighter in the world can do this. Not the Spitfire, not the Thunderbolt, not the Lightning, not the Messerschmitt, not the Focke-Wulf. The Mustang's range is double that of its closest competitor. The United States Army Air Forces, initially lukewarm about the Mustang, suddenly pays attention. In July 1943, the USAAF orders 2,200 P-51B Mustangs with Packard-built Merlin engines. The first units begin arriving in England in November 1943. The 8th Air Force, flying daylight bombing raids deep into Germany, has been suffering catastrophic losses. Without fighter escort beyond the German border, the bomber formations are slaughtered by German fighters. August 17, 1943, the Schweinfurt Regensburg raid. 376 B-17s attack ball-bearing factories. No fighter escort beyond the German border. 60 bombers are shot down. 600 men killed or captured. Loss rate, 16%. The mission is called Black Thursday. October 14th, 1943. A second Schweinfurt raid. 291 B-17s. Again, no escort over the target. 60 bombers lost. 594 men killed or captured. Loss rate, 20%. After this mission, General Ira Eaker, commander of 8th Air Force, suspends deep penetration raids. His bomber crews are being decimated. Without long-range fighter escort, daylight strategic bombing is failing. The Luftwaffe's strategy is working. Let the Americans come deep into Germany. Wait until their short-range escorts turn back, then annihilate the undefended bombers. German pilots have refined this tactic to brutal efficiency. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke, who encountered the Mustang over Schweinfurt, describes the standard approach in his diary. We watch the American escorts turn back at the border. We know precisely their maximum range. Then we attack the bombers in force. They have no defense. We can make multiple passes, attacking methodically until all ammunition is expended. The Americans are brave, but bravery without fighter cover is suicide. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a German fighter ace with over 100 victories, later writes, "We owned the sky over Germany beyond 300 kilometers from England. The American bombers came anyway, sacrificing themselves. We respected their courage while we shot them down. It was mathematical. They could not reach us with fighters, so we could not lose." That certainty, that mathematics, is about to be shattered. December 1st, 1943. Debden Airfield, England. The 354th Fighter Group, equipped with P-51B Mustangs, arrives from the United States. They are the first operational USAAF Mustang unit in Europe. Lieutenant Colonel Don Blakesley, an experienced P-47 pilot, transfers to command the group. Blakesley has flown over 200 combat missions. He knows the limitations of American fighters. The P-47's combat radius is roughly 325 miles. The P-38 Lightning can reach about 400 miles. Neither can escort bombers to the deep targets in Germany. Blakesley sits through the briefing on the P-51's capabilities. When the intelligence officer mentions the combat radius 750 miles with drop tanks, Blakesley interrupts. "Say that again." "750 miles, sir. With external tanks, the Mustang can reach Berlin and return." Blakesley stares at the map on the wall. Berlin is 600 miles from English bases. He turns to his pilots. "Gentlemen, we're going to do something no one has done before. We're going to take the fight to the Germans over their own capital. They think they're safe that deep inside Germany. We're about to prove them wrong." December 13th, 1943. The first P-51 combat mission over Europe. Target Kiel. The Mustangs fly sweep ahead of the bomber stream. 34 aircraft total. Altitude 28,000 feet. Major James Howard leads the formation. At the German border, where P-47s usually turn back, the Mustangs continue eastward. German radar stations track them. The controllers are confused. American fighters never fly this deep. They must be misreading the returns. At 20,000 feet over Kiel, Major Howard spots enemy fighters, Focke-Wulf 190s, climbing to intercept the bombers. Howard dives, his flight following. The FW-190s never expect American fighters this far into Germany. Howard closes to 300 yards and fires. 6 50-caliber machine guns 3 in each wing, 70 rounds per second. The Focke-Wulf's wing shears off. Howard pulls up, spots another 190, attacks, scores hits. The German breaks away, trailing smoke. The Mustangs rampage through the German formation. The 190s scatter. They're used to attacking undefended bombers, not fighting American fighters this deep into Germany. The psychological shock is visible in their tactics. They break off engagements, quickly, diving away. Howard's Mustangs chase them down to 10,000 feet, then climb back to altitude. Total time over target, 40 minutes. All Mustangs return to base. One FW-190 confirmed, destroyed, several damaged. More importantly, the bombers reached their target without significant fighter opposition. In the debriefing, Major Howard describes the German reaction. They were confused. I could see it in how they flew, hesitant. They kept looking around like they couldn't believe we were there. One of them radioed something. I don't speak German, but I could hear the surprise in his voice. That radio transmission is recorded by Allied listening posts. Translated, it says, American fighters over Kiel, long-range types, request confirmation. The response from ground control, impossible. No American fighters have that range. You must be seeing Spitfires. Negative. These are not Spitfires. Single engine, inline. Very fast. They followed us from the coast. Silence on the radio. Then, understood. Revise engagement protocols. The Germans don't yet understand what they're facing. They assume these are a few long-range reconnaissance fighters, perhaps modified P-47s. They don't grasp that the Americans have deployed a fighter with the range to escort bombers anywhere in Germany. That understanding comes slowly, mission by mission, kill by kill. December 22nd, 1943. Osnabrück, P-51s, Escort, B-17s. German fighters attack. The Mustangs engage. 2 Bf-109s shot down. December 24th, Strasbourg. 3 more German fighters destroyed. December 31st, Bordeaux. 4 confirmed kills. The pattern emerges. Wherever the bombers go, the Mustangs go. And wherever the Mustangs go, German fighters die. Lieutenant Gustav Rodel, a Luftwaffe pilot with JG-27, writes in his diary on January 3, 1944, encountered new American fighters today over Hanover. They escorted the bombers all the way to target and back. We attacked, but they were waiting. Fast, maneuverable, well-armed. My Staffel lost 2 aircraft, both pilots killed. These Americans are not like the others. They don't turn back. They stay with the bombers, no matter how deep we fly into the Reich. How do they have the fuel for this? The answer is in the numbers. Numbers German intelligence is still calculating, still disbelieving. The P-51B carries 184 gallons of internal fuel, with 2 75-gallon drop tanks. Total fuel capacity is 534 gallons. Cruising at 250 miles per hour at 25,000 feet, fuel consumption is roughly 63 gallons per hour. Total endurance, 8.5 hours. Combat radius, with reserves, 750 miles. The Messerschmitt Bf-109G, Germany's primary fighter, carries 88 gallons internally. With a single drop tank, 138 gallons total. Endurance, roughly 2 hours. Combat radius, 220 miles. The Focke-Wulf FW-190A, faster and more heavily armed than the 109, carries 114 gallons internally. Endurance, 2.5 hours. Combat radius, about 260 miles. The Mustang can fly 3 times farther than German fighters. This isn't a minor advantage. It's a revolution in air combat. On January 11th, 1944, the strategic implications become undeniable. Target, Oschersleben, an aircraft factory deep in central Germany, distance from English bases, 520 miles. P-51s escort the entire mission. For the first time in the war, American bombers strike a deep target and return with acceptable losses. 49 Mustangs provide escort. They claim 8 German fighters destroyed, 3 Mustangs are lost, but 2 pilots are rescued. The bomber loss rate less than 4% compared to 16 to 20% on unescorted deep raids. General Jimmy Doolittle, who takes command of 8th Air Force on January 6, 1944, sees the numbers and makes a decision that changes the war. In a meeting with his fighter commanders on January 12th, Doolittle issues new orders. Fighter pilots are no longer to stay glued to the bomber formations. Instead, they are to pursue and destroy German fighters wherever they find them. Aggressive pursuit. Doolittle emphasizes, take the fight to the enemy. Hunt them down. The Mustang makes this strategy possible. With its extraordinary range, it can chase German fighters back to their bases, strafe them on the ground, destroy them during takeoff and landing. The P-47s and P-38s, with their limited range, must always watch their fuel gauges, always calculate whether they have enough to get home. The Mustang pilots can fight without that constraint. They have fuel to burn. Literally. January 29th, 1944. Frankfurt. Major James Howard, flying alone after his flight is scattered, single-handedly engages over 30 German fighters attacking a bomber formation. For 30 minutes, Howard dives, fires, climbs, and attacks. Again and again. He shoots down 4 German fighters confirmed, damages several others, and drives the rest away from the bombers. All of this occurs 400 miles inside Germany. No other American fighter could have stayed in the fight that long, that far from base. Howard is awarded the Medal of Honor, the only fighter pilot in the European theater to receive it for a single mission. German pilots begin reporting encounters with the new American fighter. The reports are consistent and increasingly alarmed. Lieutenant Herbert Rollwage, JG-53, February 2nd, 1944. Engaged American fighters over Brunswick. They stayed with us through multiple engagements, chased us to low altitude. My wingman was shot down. I barely escaped. These aircraft have incredible endurance. We cannot outrun them, and they follow us to our bases. Oberleutnant Alfred Gryzlowski, JG-50, February 9th. The new American fighter, identified as P-51, is a serious threat. Speed approximately 700 kilometers per hour. Maneuverability excellent. Armament 6, heavy machine guns. But the most dangerous quality is range. They appear over any target in Germany. We can no longer rely on the Americans' escorts turning back. The P-51 does not turn back. Hauptmann Wolfgang Speiter, JG-11, February 16th. We attacked B-17s over Regensburg today. P-51s were there, 540 kilometers from England. The mathematics no longer make sense. How can they fly so far? Our intelligence says American fighters have limited range. The reality contradicts this. Either our intelligence is wrong, or these are not normal fighters. Losses are increasing. Pilot morale is suffering. The German High Command struggles to understand what has happened. In February 1944, Reichsmarschall Hermann Göring, commander of the Luftwaffe, holds a conference with his fighter commanders. Oberst Adolf Galland, general of fighters, presents the situation. The Americans have deployed a new long-range fighter, the P-51 Mustang. It has the range to escort bombers throughout Germany. Our previous advantage, attacking unescorted bombers deep in the Reich, no longer exists. Göring interrupts. How far can this aircraft fly? Approximately 1,200 kilometers radius, Herr Reichsmarschall. From England, it can reach anywhere in Germany, fight for an extended period, and return. Göring stares at the map. That's impossible. No single-engine fighter has that range. Nevertheless, it is true. Our pilots encounter them daily over Berlin, Munich, Vienna. They are there when we arrive and still there when we must leave to refuel. Göring's face reddens. Then we must build fighters with equivalent range. Galland chooses his words carefully. That would require a complete redesign. New engines, new fuel systems, larger airframes. The development time would be years. We don't have years. The Americans have this fighter now, in production, in large numbers. We estimate they will have over 1,000 operational by summer. The room falls silent. The implications are clear. The Luftwaffe's entire defensive strategy, built around attacking unescorted bombers, has been rendered obsolete. The Americans can now strike any target in Germany with fighter escort. The mathematical certainty that kept German pilots alive, that the escorts must turn back, no longer applies. The sky over Germany is no longer safe. March 4th, 1944. The first American fighter escort to Berlin. 182 P-51s accompany 660 bombers to the German capital. Altitude 27,000 feet. The formation crosses into German airspace at 10:20 a.m. At the border, where escorts always turn back, the Mustangs continue eastward. German radar tracks them. The controllers alert the fighter bases. Large formation of enemy aircraft, including escorts, bearing 090. Distance to Berlin, 400 kilometers. Escorts still present. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. Major Günther Rall, a German ace with over 250 victories, scrambles from Perlberg airfield with his Staffel. 12 Bf-109s, climbing hard to intercept. Rall has fought Americans before. He knows the drill. Engage the escorts, force them to use fuel, wait for them to turn back, then attack the bombers. At 25,000 feet, Rall spots the American formation. The bombers are in their standard combat box, but surrounding them, above, below, and on both flanks, are fighters, dozens of them. P-51 Mustangs, over Berlin. Rall's voice crackles over the radio. All aircraft prepare to engage. They cannot stay long this far from base. We wait for them to leave, then attack the bombers. But the Mustangs don't leave. The bomber formation reaches Berlin at 12:05 p.m. The Mustangs are still there. Rall leads his Staffel in an attack. The Mustangs engage immediately. Rall closes on one, fires a burst from his cannons. The Mustang brakes hard left, rolls, and is on Rall's tail in seconds. Rall dives away. The Mustang follows him to 5,000 feet. Before climbing back to the bombers, the German fighters make repeated attacks. Every time, the Mustangs are there, engaging, driving them off. The bombers release over the target and turn west. The Mustangs stay with them. At 12:45 p.m., 1 hour after the bombers arrived over Berlin, the Mustangs are still escorting them. At 1:15 p.m., the formation crosses back into German airspace, heading west. The Mustangs remain in formation. Rall and his remaining pilots, low on fuel and ammunition, break off and return to base. Rall lands at Perlberg at 1:30 p.m. His hands are shaking as he climbs from the cockpit. His Staffel lost 3 aircraft over Berlin. He walks to the operations room and files his combat report. Under enemy fighter activity, he writes, P-51 Mustangs provided continuous escort from the border to Berlin and return. Approximately 60 aircraft. They engaged us over the target and maintained position throughout the raid. Combat duration over Berlin, more than 1 hour. These aircraft have range we cannot match. Request updated tactical guidance. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The tactical guidance comes down from Luftwaffe High Command within days. It acknowledges reality. American fighters can now reach any target in Germany. German fighters must adapt. New tactics are issued. Engage American escorts only when necessary. Priority is destroying bombers. Use cloud cover to evade escorts. Attack during bomber assembly and after escort has departed. But that last point, after escort has departed, no longer applies. When the escorts are Mustangs, they don't depart. They stay from takeoff to landing. Oberleutnant Heinz Knoke, the pilot who first encountered Mustangs over Schweinfurt, writes in his diary on March 8, 1944, everything has changed. The Americans have a fighter that flies farther than we thought possible. They escort their bombers to Berlin, to Munich, to Vienna, to any target they choose. We can no longer wait for them to turn back, because they do not turn back. We must fight them over our own bases, over our own cities, with our own fuel running low, while they still have hours of endurance remaining. This is not a battle we can win through attrition. They have more aircraft, more pilots, more fuel, and now they have range we cannot counter. We are losing. The statistics confirm Knoke's assessment. In February 1944, before Mustangs arrive in large numbers, bomber loss rates on deep penetration raids average 12 to 15%. In March, with Mustang Escort, the rate drops to 3 to 4%. German fighter losses increase from an average of 30 per month to over 100. The exchange ratio shifts dramatically. For every Mustang lost, German fighters lose 4 to 5 aircraft. The reasons are tactical and psychological. Tactically, the Mustang forces German fighters to engage on American terms. German pilots must fight while watching their fuel gauges, knowing they have limited time before they must break off. The Americans can fight without that constraint. They can chase German fighters to low altitude, pursue them to their bases, re-engage multiple times. The Germans must disengage while they still have fuel to return home. The Americans can fight until their ammunition is exhausted. Psychologically, the Mustang shatters German pilot confidence. For 2 years, German pilots owned the sky over the Reich beyond the range of Allied escorts. They could attack bombers methodically, make multiple passes, break off when convenient. The Mustang ends that security. Now, German pilots must fight, knowing American escorts will be there throughout the mission. The certainty is gone, replaced by constant vigilance and mounting losses. Lieutenant Fritz Buchholz, JG-52, shot down over Berlin on March 22, 1944, captured and interrogated, provides his assessment to Allied intelligence. The P-51 is a shock. We were told American fighters could not reach Berlin. Then they appeared over the city, not once, but every raid. They are fast, well-armed, and flown by competent pilots, but the real advantage is range. They can fight for hours, while we must watch our fuel constantly. This gives them confidence. They know they can stay in the fight. We know we must leave, or run dry. That knowledge affects every decision, every maneuver. It is a psychological advantage, as important as any technical specification. April 8, 1944, the largest single air battle of the war. Target aircraft factories at Brunswick, 926 bombers, 835 fighters, including 568 P-51s. The Luftwaffe launches every available fighter, over 300 aircraft. At the briefings that morning, German pilots are told this is a decisive battle. Destroy the American bombers in large numbers and the daylight campaign will falter. The Mustangs make that impossible. The battle rages for 3 hours. German fighters attack in waves. Every wave meets Mustangs. The Americans are everywhere, at every altitude, engaging every attack. The Germans shoot down 30 bombers, a significant number, but lose 64 fighters in return. Exchange ratio 2 to 1 in favor of the Americans. For the Luftwaffe, losing 64 fighters and 64 pilots, many of them experienced, is unsustainable. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, who earlier wrote about German dominance over the Reich, flies in that battle. His Bf 109 is shot up by a Mustang. He crash lands near Brunswick, survives, and is pulled from the wreckage by Wehrmacht soldiers. In the hospital, he writes a letter to his brother, also a Luftwaffe pilot. We lost today, not just the battle, but the war in the air. The Americans have too many aircraft, too many pilots, and now they have a fighter that goes anywhere. We cannot replace our losses. Every day, experienced men die. Replacements arrive with 50 hours flight time. They last 1 or 2 missions. The mathematics is against us. The P-51 has made our situation hopeless. By May 1944, the Mustang-equipped groups dominate the skies over Europe. The 8th Air Force has 14 P-51 groups operational, over 700 aircraft. The 9th Air Force has additional groups supporting ground operations. The 15th Air Force, operating from Italy, converts to Mustangs. Total P-51 strength in Europe exceeds 1,000 aircraft by D-Day. German fighter pilot diaries from this period are filled with references to the Mustang. Always the same themes: its unexpected range, its persistence, its lethality. Hauptmann Emil Lang, an ace with over 150 victories, writes on May 4th, encountered P-51s over Munich. They were at the end of an 800-kilometer flight and still fought aggressively, shot down 2 of our aircraft, We could not pursue because our fuel was critically low. They followed us almost to our airfield. This weapon has changed everything. Lieutenant Walter Schuck, JG7, May 19th. The P-51 is perhaps the finest fighter in the war, not the fastest, not the most heavily armed, but the most effective. Its range means it is always there. You cannot wait it out. You cannot outlast it. You must fight it immediately, knowing it has hours of fuel while you have minutes. This is the definition of a weapon that provides its user with a decisive advantage. Oberleutnant Hans-Joachim Jabs, a night fighter ace, forced into day operations as the Allies destroyed German night fighter bases, writes on June 2nd, "I flew against P-51s today. I have fought Spitfires, Hurricanes, Yaks, P-38s, P-47s. The Mustang is different, not because of speed or armament, though both are excellent, but because of what its range allows American pilots to do. They can take risks. We cannot. They can pursue us recklessly because they have fuel to spare. We must calculate every maneuver, every mile flown against our dwindling fuel reserves. This makes us defensive when we should be aggressive. It makes them aggressive when they should be cautious. That inversion of tactical psychology, forced by one aircraft's extraordinary range, is perhaps the Mustang's greatest weapon." June 6, 1944. D-Day, Normandy, the greatest amphibious invasion in history. Allied air superiority is total. The Luftwaffe flies fewer than 100 sorties over the beachhead on D-Day. American and British aircraft fly over 14,000. P-51 Mustangs fly continuous patrols over the invasion fleet and the beaches. Any German aircraft attempting to approach is intercepted and destroyed. The Luftwaffe's inability to contest the skies over Normandy stems directly from losses accumulated over Germany in the preceding months. Losses inflicted primarily by one aircraft, the Mustang. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, commanding German forces in France, writes to his wife on June 10th, "We have no air support. The enemy owns the sky. Our fighters are outnumbered and outranged. The new American fighters fly from England to France and remain for hours. We cannot move during daylight without being attacked. Reinforcements cannot reach the front. Supplies cannot arrive. We are fighting with one hand while the other is tied. This is unsustainable." By July 1944, Luftwaffe strength is collapsing. Pilot training is cut from over 200 flight hours to less than 100. New pilots arrive at combat squadrons, barely able to take off and land. They are thrown into combat against American pilots with hundreds of hours of combat time, flying superior aircraft with unlimited range. The results are predictable. German pilot losses in July reach 320. Production cannot keep pace. Fighter strength declines despite factories working continuously. August 17th, 1944. Exactly 1 year after the first Schweinfurt raid, the disastrous mission that cost 60 bombers, without fighter escort, the Americans return to Schweinfurt. This time, P-51s escort the entire mission. The bombers strike their targets and return. Losses: 3 bombers, less than 1%. German losses: 23 fighters. The contrasts could not be starker. 1 year, 1 aircraft, and the entire dynamic of the air war has reversed. Oberst Adolf Galland, in a report to Goering on August 20th, does not soften the truth. The appearance of the P-51 Mustang in large numbers has shifted the balance of air power decisively. We can no longer prevent American bombers from reaching any target in Germany. We can inflict losses, but not sufficient to halt the campaign. Our own losses are crippling. Experienced pilots are dying faster than they can be replaced. New pilots last an average of 3 combat missions before being killed or wounded. This is directly attributable to our inability to match the Mustang's range and performance. We are losing the air war. Goering's response, according to Galland's post-war account, is to blame the pilots. He accuses them of cowardice, of not attacking aggressively enough. Galland, normally restrained, explodes. The pilots are dying by the hundreds. They are not cowards. They are fighting against overwhelming odds with inadequate aircraft. The Americans have a fighter that renders our tactics obsolete. Until we can counter the P-51's range advantage, we cannot win. The meeting ends with Goering storming out Galland is effectively sidelined, his influence diminished, but his assessment is accurate. And the P-51 has fundamentally altered the air war. September 1944. 8th Air Force P-51s begin flying missions into Poland and Czechoslovakia, escorting bombers to targets over 1,000 miles from English bases. German defenses are virtually non-existent this far east. The few fighters that intercept are overwhelmed. The presence of American fighters over Eastern Europe, deep in what was once German-controlled airspace, has a profound psychological impact on both German pilots and civilians. The message is clear. Nowhere is safe. American air power can reach anywhere. October 7th, 1944. Lieutenant Urban Drew, flying a P-51 with the 361st Fighter Group, spots a formation of Messerschmitt Me-262 jet fighters taking off from Akma Airfield. The Me-262 is Germany's jet-powered fighter, capable of over 540 miles per hour, untouchable in level flight. But Drew catches them during takeoff when they're slow and vulnerable. He dives, shoots down two Me-262s before they can accelerate. The encounter illustrates the Mustang's versatility. Even against jets, the Mustang's range and persistence allow American pilots to find opportunities. They patrol German airfields, wait for jets to land or take off, and attack when the jets are vulnerable. November 27th, 1944. P-51s from the 15th Air Force, based in Italy, fly an escort mission to a synthetic oil plant near Blechhammer in Silesia. Distance from base, 860 miles. The Mustangs escort the bombers to the target, engage German defenders, and return. Flight time, over 7 hours. No other fighter in the world can fly such a mission. German pilots, already demoralized, now must contend with American fighters appearing from the south as well as the west. There is no sanctuary anywhere in the Reich. December 23rd, 1944. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke, who first encountered Mustangs over Schweinfurt 15 months earlier, leads his Staffel on what will be his final mission. They intercept B-17s over Osnabrück. P-51s engage them immediately. Knoke shoots down one bomber, but is then attacked by two Mustangs. His Bf-109 is hit, engine failing. He manages to crash land near his base. He survives, but is too injured to fly again. In his diary, the final entry reads, "The war is over for me. Perhaps that is a mercy. Every mission now is a death sentence. The P-51s are everywhere. We have no answer for them. Germany will lose this war in the air before it loses on the ground. The Americans have built a weapon we cannot counter." January 1st, 1945. Operation Bodenplatte. The Luftwaffe's last major offensive. 800 German fighters attack Allied airfields in Belgium, France, and Holland, attempting to destroy aircraft on the ground. It is a desperate gamble. The operation achieves tactical surprise and destroys over 200 Allied aircraft, but German losses are catastrophic. 237 fighters shot down, 153 pilots killed, many of them irreplaceable unit commanders and instructors. Among the Allied fighters destroyed on the ground are some P-51s, but most Mustang groups are flying missions elsewhere and are untouched. Within 48 hours, destroyed Allied aircraft are replaced from reserves. German losses cannot be replaced. After Bodenplatte, the Luftwaffe ceases to exist as an effective fighting force. The decision to launch the operation and its failure is directly connected to the impact of the P-51. German commanders knew their fighter force was being systematically destroyed by Mustang-escorted bomber raids. They gambled on a single surprise strike to change the dynamic. The gamble failed. February 3rd, 1945. 8th Air Force launches over 1,000 bombers and 900 fighters against Berlin. P-51s provide the bulk of escort. German interception is minimal. Fewer than 50 fighters rise to contest the raid. The Luftwaffe is conserving its dwindling strength for a last defense of the Reich, but that defense never materializes. April 10th, 1945. The last major 8th Air Force mission P-51s escort bombers to targets throughout Germany. Opposition is sporadic. Most German fighter units have been grounded for lack of fuel. The few that fly are quickly overwhelmed. April 20th, 1945. Major George Preddy, the top-scoring Mustang ace with 26.5 victories, is killed not by enemy fire but by friendly anti-aircraft fire during a low-level pursuit of German fighters on Christmas Day, 1944. His death illustrates both the Mustang's dominance and the risks of aggressive pursuit. Preddy was chasing German fighters at low altitude, so focused on the kill that he flew over American ground positions, which fired on his aircraft, not recognizing it, in the heat of combat. May 7th, 1945. Germany surrenders. The air war is over. The final statistics are compiled. P-51 Mustangs are credited with 4,950 aerial victories in Europe, more than any other Allied fighter. Ground claims add thousands more destroyed aircraft. But the Mustang's real impact cannot be measured in kills alone. Its range made strategic bombing viable. It allowed the Allies to strike German industry, oil production and transportation deep inside the Reich, systematically dismantling the Nazi war machine. Post-war analysis by both Allied and German air commanders confirms the P-51's decisive role. General Karl Spaatz, commanding general of U.S. strategic air forces in Europe, states in his final report, the P-51 Mustang was the weapon that made strategic bombing successful. Without its range, we could not have escorted bombers to deep targets. Without that escort, losses would have been prohibitive. The Mustang allowed us to take the air war to the enemy's heartland and maintain it until Germany collapsed. General Feldmarschall Albert Kesselring, commanding German forces in the West, writes in his memoir, "The appearance of the Mustang changed the air war fundamentally. Our fighters had successfully contested Allied air superiority up to that point, but the Mustang's range ended our defensive advantage. We could no longer attack unescorted bombers. We had to fight American fighters on their terms, over our own territory, while they had fuel and time advantages. It was an impossible situation." Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, who survived the war, is asked in a 1965 interview what single weapon had the greatest impact on Germany's defeat. His answer is immediate. The P-51 Mustang, not the atomic bomb, which came too late, not the T-34 tank, though that was devastating in the East. The Mustang, it gave the Americans the ability to destroy our industry, our fuel, our transportation, all while systematically destroying our fighter force. Without the Mustang, strategic bombing would have failed. With it, our defeat was certain. Adolf Galland, in his 1954 memoir, writes extensively about the Mustang. It was the most effective fighter of the war, not because it was the fastest or most heavily armed, but because it combined range, performance, and reliability in a way no other aircraft did. When German pilots saw P-51s over Berlin, over Munich, over targets we thought were beyond Allied fighter range, it broke our morale. We realized we had no sanctuary. The Americans could reach us anywhere, stay as long as necessary, and return safely. That psychological impact, knowing the enemy owned the sky even deep inside Germany, was as destructive as the bombs themselves. The technical achievement of the P-51 is extraordinary. An airframe designed in 117 days, powered initially by an adequate engine, transformed by a British suggestion into the finest long-range fighter of the war. Its laminar-flow wings, efficient cooling system, and aerodynamic refinement gave it range no designer thought possible in 1941. 2,000 miles with drop tanks, 750 miles combat radius, 8.5 hours endurance. Numbers that seemed impossible became routine. But technology alone does not win wars. The P-51's impact came from how it was used. Aggressive escort tactics, pursuit of German fighters to their bases, standing patrols over enemy airfields, relentless pressure that gave German pilots no rest, no sanctuary. The Mustang enabled a strategy of air superiority through attrition and presence. Be everywhere, always, and make the enemy fight on your terms. German pilots, reading their memoirs, their diaries, their combat reports, understood this. They respected the Mustang, not just for its capabilities, but for what those capabilities allowed American pilots to do. Fight without fear of fuel exhaustion, pursue aggressively, take risks, own the sky. Franz Stigler, the German pilot who first encountered Spitfires over Dunkirk and learned to respect British determination, flew against Mustangs in 1944. He survived the war, emigrated to Canada, and in 1990 met Charles Brown, an American B-17 pilot Stigler had spared over Germany in 1943. The two became friends. In a recorded conversation in 1996, Stigler is asked about the Mustang. It was the airplane that ended any hope we had of winning. When I saw P-51s over Munich, over my home city, escorting bombers, fighting our fighters, and then flying back to England, I knew the war was lost. No nation can win when the enemy controls the sky over its capital, its cities, its factories. The Mustang gave the Americans that control. It was beautifully designed, beautifully built, and beautifully flown. We learned to respect it, to fear it, because it represented something we could not match. Range, persistence, the ability to be there, always, no matter how deep we retreated, no matter where we hid. The Mustang found us, and when it found us, it killed us. The story of the P-51 Mustang is not just about an aircraft. It is about the transformation of strategic air warfare from a theory into reality. It is about German pilots who believed they were safe beyond a certain distance from enemy bases, and the shattering of that belief. It is about the mathematics of range, fuel consumption, and combat radius becoming weapons as lethal as guns and cannons. It is about psychological warfare fought not with propaganda, but with presence, with American fighters appearing over Berlin, over Vienna, over targets German pilots thought untouchable. When Hauptmann Heinz Knoke wrote in his combat report on October 17, 1943, "Everything has changed," he was recording a moment of realization shared by thousands of German pilots over the next 18 months. The certainty that American escorts would turn back, the mathematical comfort that deep targets were safe, the tactical advantage of attacking undefended bombers, all of this ended the day P-51 Mustangs appeared over Schweinfurt. The Germans didn't believe it at first. American fighters with 2,000-mile range. Impossible. But mission after mission, the Mustangs were there, over Schweinfurt, over Berlin, over Munich, over every target the bombers struck. The impossible became routine. The unbelievable became fact. German pilots adapted as best they could. New tactics, evasive maneuvers, hit-and-run attacks. But adaptation requires time and resources. The Luftwaffe had neither. Losses mounted, experienced pilots died, replacements were undertrained and quickly killed. Fuel shortages grounded entire units. Production couldn't match losses. By early 1945, the Luftwaffe was a spent force, destroyed not in a single decisive battle, but through systematic attrition enabled by one aircraft's extraordinary range. The P-51 Mustang didn't win the war alone. Ground forces, naval power, Soviet offensives in the East, economic production, intelligence, leadership, all contributed to Allied victory. But in the air war over Europe, the Mustang was the decisive weapon. It made strategic bombing possible, allowed the systematic destruction of German industry and infrastructure, and broke the Luftwaffe through persistent, relentless combat deep inside Germany. No other aircraft could have done this. The P-47, for all its ruggedness, lacked the range. The P-38, despite twin engines, couldn't match the Mustang's efficiency. The Spitfire, magnificent over Britain, couldn't reach German targets from English bases. Only the Mustang had the range, performance, and reliability to escort bombers to Berlin and beyond, fight for hours over the target, and return home. That capability, born from Edgar Schmued's innovative design, Ronald Harker's insight about the Merlin engine and the marriage of American mass production with British engineering excellence changed the war. German pilots who survived learned this truth through bitter experience. The Americans could reach anywhere. The Mustang made sure of it. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.